or join the team at sport-social.co.uk.
Hello, welcome back to the FPL Masterclass. I'm Haider, Rubbani, and I'm joined by Rob Blanchette. Again, we're here for game week 3. So, Rob, welcome back. I've had an absolute shocker, I'll be honest with you. I'm sitting very, very low down in pretty much every single league. I had an absolute blank last week. I went Salah and I went Bruno, I went Captain Bruno. I mean, I think only my defense performed, to be honest. Tsimikas, Shaw got a couple of bonus points as well, and you had Kufal, but it was a really bad week. None of my strikers performed, apart from Danny Ings. So, I'm a little bit, I need to make changes. So that's why we're here. But how are you doing? How are you feeling after the last game week?
I'm good, mate. Thank you very much. Yes, one of the reasons why we wanted to do this show is to show the differential, especially with FPL. So after game week 1, it was very easy to just say it's going to be a Bruno and Salah year, isn't it? But what we saw last week is that FPL doesn't conform to those things, and you do have to do a lot of chopping and changing. You can stick with your favourite players and they might deliver, but as you've just seen there in the last week, that Bruno had that terrible week. And the way we've tried to design my team and the team that we're using here for our show is to just spread it across a little bit, but also still using the premium players, but targeting certain matches, certain game weeks to try and find a formula to get those point totals. Like I said, obviously in the first few weeks, 60 points a week. That's the aim. If you get 60 points, you've done your job. So first 2 weeks, this team has got over 60 points both times. I think it's 145 points in 2 weeks. And that's about right. It's about mid-table in most people's eyes. Some people have started off very hot, but it's about the long run. It is a marathon.
Yeah, absolutely. You're looking here, Callum sitting in 189,000 and top 189,000, which is really good. Shearshard's done really well. He had 85 and then he got 77 in the recent game week. And that's how I'm sort of thinking, Rob. For me, it is about getting that 60 points. Before we go into that, though, let's talk about the Champions League draw quickly. And I've got it up here in front of me. I think it's important to have a discussion about this just because, some really interesting matchups here. We'll start with Group A, and you've got City and PSG. You can't make this up, Rob. Sometimes I sit here and I think, is it fixed? I'm not even kidding you. Is it fixed? Because, it's great to see City get a difficult group, but it's puzzling to see that PSG and City, Ronaldo and Messi. I don't want to talk about Ronaldo. It's made me feel a bit disappointed today. You got Leipzig and you got Bruges. Group B, you've got Liverpool, Atletico, Porto, and Milan. That could be considered maybe the group of death. Group C, Sporting, Dortmund, Ajax, and Besiktas. That's a nice one for Dortmund there. Group D, Inter, Real, Shakhtar, and Sheriff. And then you've got Group E, Bayern, Barcelona, Benfica, Dinamo Kiev. And then Group F, this is one we're really interested in, Rob, to be honest with you. Villarreal, Manchester United, Atalanta, Young Boys. Manchester United will be very pleased with that, in my opinion. But they never make anything easy. Group G, Lille, Sevilla, Salzburg, and Wolfsburg. And then Group H, Chelsea, Juve, Zenit, and Malmo. So just give me your thoughts initially on what you think of those some of those groups.
Yeah, very interesting draws. Obviously, the whole City and PSG tie-in is the story of the group stage. It will be hugely obviously covered with Messi going there and with Pep and everything that goes with it. Will Cristiano Ronaldo be at Manchester City? I know that's been talked about a lot in the last 2 or 3 days, but the actual truth is that there's not been loads of progress on it. People have talked about it like it's happening tomorrow, but we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. But yeah, a good draw also for United. I think that getting through this group stage is vital, obviously in terms of the project, taking United to the next level, finding a way to be competitive in the biggest competitions. We've seen obviously the first weeks of the Premier League of United, a brilliant first week and a kind of mediocre second week. And we want to see that change. But the Champions League will give United an opportunity of a huge trophy. They've just got to stay in it this time. I think even though we got to Europa League final last year, I will say, I'm not that interested in Europa League one way or the other. I'm interested in Champions League, and I really want to see Manchester United make a good fist of that this season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the key for me. I look at this, and I'm not interested in turning around and saying, any excuses here, to be honest with you. I look at it and I think Atalanta could be a banana skin. There is a comment here saying, could be a banana skin. They're a really well-drilled side, really good attacking side. But actually, I think it might play into Manchester United's hands a little bit because, they are a very attacking side. And if United want to play counter-attacking football, they can really rip them apart. I know Liverpool did that last season, I believe. And, we've seen United do that to teams like Leeds as well. But quickly, let's just touch on Ronaldo. It's, for me, you shouldn't get too attached to players and things like that. But for me, when I grew up, he was the player. He was the one for Manchester United. I was 8 years old when he joined Manchester United, and he gave so many fantastic memories. And our last Champions League win was with Ronaldo, obviously at the center of it. And for me, it's really disappointing. So you said it's not close. We're seeing a lot of reports saying otherwise. I mean, what have you heard on that respect?
It's more what people are doing is they're trying to make a transfer happen through logic. Yeah, so the transfers are often not based on logic. They're kind of based on need, and maybe sometimes there's a fundamental element to sort of a player leaving one club and joining another. So let's look at it like this. Cristiano Ronaldo has asked Juventus to leave. That's the first point. He'd like to leave. Juventus would like Cristiano Ronaldo to leave. So that tells you that there's a deal to be had. Now, the £25 million that Juventus want, most clubs don't want to pay for someone of that age and also with that wage. So City need a striker. So the world have put 2 and 2 together and made 6. They've also talked about Mendes kind of brokering the deal, trying to obviously get being part of maybe the Mbappe move to Real Madrid and kind of brokering all of these different deals, like the puppet master with the string across world football. Do I think that Cristiano Ronaldo is definitely going to go to Manchester City? Well, no, I don't, because the rumblings that we normally hear from agents and sources close to players and all of these are not present at the moment. They're just not. It is more paper talk than anything. Now, I've heard 2 or 3 what I would call credible journalists speak about it in a progressive light in terms of Manchester City. What I will say is this, that those journalists themselves are connected to Manchester City. So make of that what you will. It's either that they know that there's something going on there, or we're playing a little bit of a PR game with the clubs that we work with. So I'm not 100% sure. Ronaldo going to Manchester City makes sense for him if he wants to win the Champions League, if he wants to win the Premier League. If he wants to destroy his Manchester United legacy that goes with it, then so be it, Haider. Like you just said there, you were 8 years old. I'm a little bit older than you. I was there when Cristiano made his debut. I remember when he came to the football club. I'm in stands as a grown man. He did great for us. He was a great player. He will always be remembered as that. If he wants to burn all of that, so be it. Well done, mate. Take it. Take your money. Spend your 2 years at City. And like Peter Schmeichel, there's a lot of United fans that still don't forget. So I said
another one, Rob.
Well, you said this about Andy Cole, and we talked about obviously Carlos Tevez before. I said Carlos Tevez the other day because he was auctioning off one of his shirts, and I said, and I kind of made a flippant comment on it, saying that he is what he did at Manchester United in that spell that he was with us. And he was probably my favourite player around that time.
Same. I was devastated when he went, Rob.
I wasn't alone. I remember the day he left, the final game of the season. And I remember thinking, do I buy a Tevez shirt today? And I never think stuff like that. So I was really upset with that. I kind of thought, I knew he was going to go to Man City at that point. And it was nice to see him back in his United shirt, because I think all these years later, you can kind of go, well, he spent a couple of good years at City, but really his whole story isn't about Manchester City. I think we look at Cristiano Ronaldo, because his story is effectively United and Real Madrid. If he wants to burn half of that legacy, go ahead, burn it. It doesn't matter, because football's about moving forward. It's not about nostalgia. It's not about the past. It's about what happens next year, this year, the next game. I will be happy to see Cristiano Ronaldo in a Manchester City shirt if we go and buy Haaland. Happy, no problem, because Cristiano was with us during a successful period. That's now been kind of consigned to history. That's how it goes. And we look forward. We look to this season and we look to next. And that's how football fans, I think, should be. If we get too caught up on the nostalgia point of it and, our heroes always letting us down in football, which they do, it's just what it is. It's fine. You can get your Cantonars and you can get your Robsons, and they're my two favourite United players of all time. But Cristiano doesn't even fit in that category at all.
But here's a point. So you mentioned Cantona, Robson, obviously, when you were younger. I mean, there's a point here saying, showing to enjoy football. Think of it this way. So think of it like, for me, so obviously I'm younger than you, Rob. So for me, it was Cristiano. It was when Beckham left, I was devastated. He's Beckham and Ruud van Nistelrooy were my two favorite players. When Ronaldo came in, I was very young, 8 years old, and obviously through my to my early teens, mid-teens, Ronaldo left. I mean, if you were in that situation, when you saw Robson go to Liverpool, or you saw Cantona go to Arsenal, I mean, you'd probably feel the same, wouldn't you? Because when you're younger and there's a lot of generations of Man United fans who are so like they've grown up on Ronaldo and Manchester United, what him and Fergie built, and Tevez and Rooney. It's difficult to separate the sort of the level head from I guess the nostalgia and the heartstrings, really.
Yeah, and that's the whole point of it. Is like you just said, there, Robson going to Liverpool, that would never have happened. Cantona going to one of our rivals was never going to happen. He retired at Manchester United. So now, in historical terms, we can look at those players and place them where we want to place them. Let's be honest, Cristiano Ronaldo was itching to get out of Manchester United. He got out of Manchester United after doing a deal with the club. There was a record fee at the time, and he's gone on and had this stellar career with Real Madrid. So to us as United fans, his name still gets sung at Old Trafford. He's going to be remembered as a hero. But it shows, and I say this all the time about football being a business, is that Cristiano Ronaldo is not bothered about those things. But I will just say one more thing on it, because we'll end the Cristiano talk, is that Cristiano Ronaldo has expressed no desire to play for Manchester City. What people are saying about this is that they're putting two and two together, as I said, and making a deal up. Now, that deal could happen because it does make sense. But at the same time, it makes just as much sense of him staying at Juventus. If Juventus just pulled a trigger and maybe negotiate a different deal with him, he could stay there. He could go to another club. I think eventually his destiny is the MLS. So I think that you could see him. He loves Miami as a city. So I can see him possibly going and playing for Beckham's franchise over there. So these things I think are more likely to happen. But in the immediacy, people are talking about the next week or so. And United fans have turned into like nervous wrecks, Haider, because they think they're going to see, Ronaldo in a City shirt. Let him wear it. Take that shirt, go and do it, and then we'll take you on. And I feel like that. I feel buoyant. I'm higher on Sancho and Varane than I am lower on Ronaldo. I look at that. I think United should also be exploring the chance of maybe getting Ronaldo for a year or two. I think he's still worth it, and I think he fits United system better than he fits City's system. But wouldn't it even be better if he went to City and failed? Wouldn't that be delightful? Yeah, he goes to City and we win the title. These things do happen. So, I don't look at it at the start of the season feeling like that. I might feel different if he goes to City and has a stellar 2 years, wins the Champions League and all of that. But I'll tell you what, he's not LeBron James. Yeah, he's not in that class at the moment anymore. He still scores goals, but he's not really he's not the alpha male anymore. And neither is Lionel Messi. That's why their clubs have said goodbye to them, because if they were, they would have found ways to keep them, even though these clubs haven't got the cash like they once did. So not too worried about Cristiano Ronaldo, but hey, he will be mentioned on this show on the FPL Masterclass if he ends up at Manchester City. We'll just have to see what his price will be for FPL.
I can't do that, Rob. Anyway, we're gonna park the Ronaldo chat, guys. So look, thanks for all your comments. We're gonna start talking about FPL. So do please stay and get your questions in and your comments. We want to know how well you guys did. So we're going to start, Rob, with Kings of Game Week 2. So we've got a lovely little graphic here from Hass, the producer of the show. So let's just go through it. So we saw Lloris. I mean, Spurs have won 2 from 2 now, haven't they? So you got Lloris with 11 points. Reece James was absolutely fantastic. He got a goal. I believe he got the assist for Lukaku, the top performer of the week. Tyrone Mings as well is in there. Duffy got the goal for Brighton. We had Laporte as well getting on the score sheet, and he got a clean sheet, I believe. Trent seems to be hitting some form. We did speak about him last week. Ben Rama has been a really nice differential, which has been fantastic. You've got Greenwood again with a goal, and I'm really tempted to bring Mason in this week. You've got Glick as well with 9 points. And you got Antonio as well. I mean, I was thinking, should I bring Antonio in or not? I didn't bring him in, and he's absolutely firing. He's now West Ham's top scorer. And then you've got Gabriel Jesus as well with a goal. So looking at that team, Rob, what sticks out to you? I mean, there was a lot of high-scoring defenders. Look at that. There's 5 defenders in there. And it seems that the wing-backs are getting, or the fullbacks are getting points this season so far.
Of course, fullbacks are one of the real valuable assets in FPL because they get forward, they get assists, and obviously they get clean sheets as well. And I think when you look at this team, like I think after now 2 weeks going into game week 3, you start to see the patterns as to not just the form book, but just players that maybe have true value. So like you just said there with Mason, you know, still obviously classified as a midfielder in FPL, which I still think is a bit weird, you know, in the sense that he does play right on the forward line for Manchester United. He's a goal scorer, not necessarily more of a midfielder. But when you look at players like, say, Trent, and we talked about Trent last week, didn't we? And had a little bit of a kind of disagreement in the sense of like, you were like, wouldn't touch Trent. And I was like, well, it depends what he's doing. I think when you look at Liverpool's form, Trent now becomes a kind of premium prospect. Is he the kind of player that you want to pay the money for? Now, we're going to answer that more when we look at game week 3 and what our tips are in terms of maybe purchasing. But yeah, you look at that. Antonio, again, another season of great form, straight into it, 16 points. Gabriel Jesus kind of now moving away from the number 9 role and looks like he'll play a wide role for Manchester City this year. That suits him. He'll get goals and assists from wide. Yeah, and when you look at that kind of in the defenders thing, Duffy, a £4 million defender at Brighton, I think that's a clean sheet and a goal for him now in the first 2 weeks. There are players in this league in that £4 to £5 million range that if you manipulate it enough, you will squeeze the points out of them. And you don't always have to go big. You know, it's another thing I say about getting that 60-point mark every week is that you can be obsessed with Bruno and obsessed with Salah and stick with them and then have just a bit players around them. But as long as your bit players are actually playing, are actually starting games, giving you actual value. And I think when you look at that list there, look at Laporta, you know, someone who people thought might have left Manchester City by now, thought might have been sold. You know, there is true value there. James at Chelsea, another player where he might get plenty more starts this year as a wing back simply because of how Chelsea have purchased, and they're looking to obviously feed Lukaku. So you'll find that James, being a progressive, he'll just play more games this season.
Yeah, James is a key one for me. If Chelsea are going to play 3 at the back and he's going to play as a full a wing back, then I think he's a really good option. We have, Rob, actually got the number 1 player in the FPL Masterclass League in the house. So he's sitting in number 1 of the league. So congratulations, doing well at the moment. And we've got the United Way saying here, Rob, triple captain Salah. To be honest, I did have a little chuckle when I saw that, Rob. I'm going
to talk about that.
Do you want to talk about what? Should we talk about it now? And I'll get the graphic up.
Okay, I think my team, did you stick the team up? Have you got that graphic?
Yeah,
is that available? Here we go. So I decided to triple captain Salah, and I thought about it for quite a long time. And the reason why I did it was you looked at the fixture, you looked at kind of the game week in terms of what Salah does in the early game weeks for Liverpool, and it was a bit of a gamble. But I'm still happy I played the triple captain, and people say, well, that's ridiculous because if you play triple captain, you want 50 points out of your skipper. Looking at the game week, I think I got 67 points I got there. That Salah triple captain just gave me those kind of extra 6 or 7 points that made it into a decent game week and what might have been a little bit more disappointment. So I'm okay with burning the triple captain because it really is a roll of the dice. You could play the weakest opponent in the league with the best player and put triple captain on him and get 6 points, 7 points, 8 points. People would have been triple captain in Bruno, wouldn't they, in that previous game? So I'm cool with that. It's just that I think when you look at it and you look at your things like your bench boost, and I also think when you're playing your wild card, they're much more thoughtful processes of trying to utilize maybe if it is a double game week. A lot of people save their triple captain for the last game week just as a matter of principle to be able to do it in the final week. I like to use it early and maybe try and steal a march, but I'm all right with it. He got 9 points. I'm like, well, not the best thing ever, but better than him getting 3 points.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. I'm just looking at your team now. I mean, look, I I had Ings. None of my front line performed. Iheanacho, I'm just puzzled to see him on the bench. I don't know what's going on there at Leicester. And Leicester got trashed, didn't they? Really, I know they had the red card with Perez. But I'm looking at as well. Simic has been great value, hasn't he? Dallas as well. I've got him. Gundogan hasn't done very much for me as well. So you're looking here at your team. Where are you looking and thinking, right, I need to improve? Because there's a question here saying, do you bring in Lukaku? You don't have Bruno, but you bring him in straight away now, or is he a better option than someone like Bruno?
I think when you look at it now, the Bruno leaning, which is what, especially United fans, they're going to look at Bruno Fernandez and say, I want him in my team. You've now got to kind of work out the run that United are going to be on and whether he's going to get the same opportunities that he would do against certain clubs. And then you have to compare it to the fact that Romelu Lukaku will probably score in almost every Chelsea game. Now, that might be a kind of leap of faith saying that, but Chelsea might even lose a game 4-1 and Lukaku still scores. So you have to look at it like that. Whereas when United play badly, what happens to Bruno? Bruno gets 2 points or 1 point. So it's also about your faith in the team. So if you feel that United will go on a run and will play well, then you can expect Bruno to score goals. Scored a hat-trick on game week 1 against Leeds. So that makes sense. But do you bring in Lukaku now? Well, I think, have we got the game week 3 team there to put up? Have we got that graphic as well, Haider?
Is this the one that you, like your picks?
Yes, this is it. So this would be effectively my game week 3 picks using my existing squad. Now, the reason why I've built this squad for this week like this is because I had 2 transfers, which I saved, which is what I wanted to do. And I've used 0 points to get what I want. So that's my squad. And effectively, I've done that by bringing in Basuma, who once again started well for Brighton. Everyone loves Basuma. I think he got 8 points last week, which I think is really good for.
He got the assist and he got bonus points.
He got the assist, and because of his mobility, you know that he's going to be in and around the box now and then, and he's also going to get Man of the Match awards. He's that kind of player. 4.5 million, I think, in that value bracket is fantastic. That's a really good price. And what that allowed me to do was, because I'd banked that 4 million quid, which I'd started on game week 1 and game week 2 when I talked about it, it meant then that I could go get another premium player. So I've got Salah in place. If Gundogan goes off again, like you'd hope, and plays well and plays further forward, especially depending on what City's answer is with their number 9, if Gundogan goes and scores goals, he's going to score. He's going to get you value at 7.4. But then you look at the front line. Now, in years gone by, I've always said, let your strikers be cheap options because they tend not to get loads of assists. They do score goals. But when you look at the tables at the end of the season, strikers are normally, for the value that you pay, don't get you big points. That's changed this year, completely changed, because you got Lukaku at 11.5, you got Danny Ings at 8, and you said there Antonio now is 7.6. And as I said, every game week, those 3 players might score. They might score you a goal every game week and give you true value. So last year, people went for Bamford, yeah? And Bamford was a bit of a left field go. I put Bamford in my team, and he did really well. This year, I look at the striking lineup. I don't want Bamford. He will still score goals, but when I look at the alternatives, and of course here, the alternative here is Romelu Lukaku. It's the big premium striker to come in. Then it gives you different kind of options. And I think when you look at that squad there's a real balance from the defense. You talked about Tsimikas being 4 million, 4.1 now. Tsimikas probably is not going to play ever again. Yeah. So he is going to be a kind of dump and stash. So I will replace him eventually, but there are players that we'll talk about who you could replace him with, but it would be a like for like swap. But then when you've got players like Digne, who gets assists, Cancelo kind of plays in midfield, Cresswell takes all of the set pieces at West Ham, and West Ham has started well. The kind of thumbtack there is Target, who's kind of fallen out of favour very, very quickly.
Yeah, he was on the bench. He got dropped after a really bad game in the first game.
Yeah, they didn't play well first game, and he's kind of just been dropped for now. But I'm happy to kind of sit on him, as a substitute. But then when you look at my midfield again, there's balance there. Willock will probably be quite likely to score for Newcastle if they score at all. He might be one of my bench options, but it allows me to let those front 3 go and run wild. Yeah, I'm going to captain Antonio next week, which might hurt me if Salah goes off and does what Salah does. But I think when you look at that, those front three now, you can lean on them as captains and vice captains throughout the whole season. And that's kind of what I want to do. Now, that might change. But the big question maybe in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks is there another premium player in there that you'd want to consider with, say, Bruno Fernandez? And that premium player is a guy who just said he was going to stay at his football club for the rest of the season and is the England captain. So in the early weeks, I said, don't touch Harry Kane with a barge pole because we didn't know what was happening. We didn't know if he was going to play. Now it's time to start thinking about Harry Kane. So Lukaku's in there for me, and Kane's price is like ridiculous, talking about in excess of 12 million. And that puts him off for me. But if he starts getting goals and assists in the way that he did last year, then there is some logic to say that you use your wild card, you bring in Kane, you bring in Son as a double up, you sacrifice a Manchester City player. So in this case, it might be someone like Torres. You downgrade a Torres into a £4 or £5 million player like a Basuma, who might then go and sit on your bench, that kind of value. And then you've got real double up potential with Tottenham. If Tottenham start playing well when Harry Kane comes into the team, when he gets assists, you can bet those assists are going to be for Son and vice versa. Son now probably won't play as the striker. That's one thing to consider. We talked about last week that he would probably be the striker if Kane went to City. Now he's going to play his previous role, but let's be honest, he's still got a ton of points last year playing in a wider position.
Yeah, some great points, Rob. I'm going to bring out some questions and some comments here. So there's a comment here saying it's Lukaku versus Van Dyke this week. The international break waited out to at least the international break. I think that's referring to bringing Lukaku in. Callum saying here that I think after game week 3, Daniel Calvert-Lewin is a better option than Danny Ings. I think that's a really good point. Yeah. And then one here is an interesting one. It's a question. Would you use a wild card after the international break or wait till the end of the first half of the season? So it's a really difficult one. I did the same thing as you. I didn't use a transfer last week. So I have got 2 free transfers. Now I am really going to play around in my team and see what I can do. I can bring in Antonio. My biggest problem here, Rob, is that I'm probably going to have to take out one of Salah or Bruno to bring in Lukaku. So the issue that we spoke about at the beginning, and I think that's one of my issues at the moment. So I'm trying to balance things out, and I'm looking at Tsimikas as well. And there's a question here: why can't you sell Tsimikas for 4.2 when he's priced at 4.2? Can you answer that, Rob?
Because it's the price that you purchased him at generally. So I think that's the sale price, is that if you bought him low, then you have to sell low. It just means if you want to buy him, you then have to buy him at the current price.
Yeah, I believe so. So I'm looking at it now, and let's talk about Tsimikas in a way. So Livramento was very good against Manchester United. He looks a real talent. Another one, the Chelsea sort of, machine churning out this talent. So is he an option for Tsimikas as well? Because, he's going to play a lot for Southampton. He's progressive, you can tell. He gets forward. You need to really pick up these 4 million, 4.5 million defenders, because you can't be relying on Cancelos and Diñas every single week, can you?
No, you can't. And I think that Livramento is really the obvious choice for Tsimikas. The other player you might look at, I think Mitchell, I think he's more this year at Crystal Palace, but he started the games. I think it's 4.5. But there are plenty of players in that bracket of 4 to 4.5 where you can go hunting and go and find a player. We talked about Brandon Williams at the end of last week. Again, don't really want to touch Brandon simply because he's at Norwich. Norwich ship goals for fun, and that is a problem. So even if he gets an assist, it might be completely offsetted by Norwich's horrible defensive displays. Exactly. It's Brandon plays well and people might be patting him on the back and he still might be getting zeros. So that's a risky one. At least with Tsimikas, at Liverpool, you're buying into a defence that's going to get clean sheets at some point. But I do think that the time is to sell him now. Like you were just saying, you've got a double up week with your transfers. I wouldn't be using Tsimikas in that double up. I would be using premium players. So like you're saying there, do I get rid of Salah? Do I get rid of Bruno? Well, you might want to keep Salah, you might want to keep Bruno, which means you might then use just one transfer to roll your double over to next week, see what happens with the international window. Or you might want to go all in, get rid of one, get Lukaku or get Kane and reshape your team without burning a wild card. Now, I will say use the wild card in weeks kind of 4 to 6. Yeah, maybe 4 to 8, because that is when teams are settling down. You know who's the starters. You know who's taking set pieces, and these things do matter. You need to find out. And there's always little players that come in. You said Liveramento's one, but players that you wouldn't have bought in game week 1. And then you can use your wild card. And of course, you've still got your next wild card to use in the January transfer window. So there's no real fear there of messing it up too much. Now, when I look at my team, I'm not even thinking a wild card at the moment. I've got some premium defenders, I've got premium midfielders, and I've got the most premium attack I think I could probably buy at the moment without a Bruno Fernandez in my team. And I feel all right about that, because if Bruno scores a hat-trick against Wolves, yeah, I'll be dead happy with that just because he scored a hat-trick for my team. But I'm also confident in what I've got there and say that front 8, when you look at the balance, whoever I pick there, maybe Basuma being on my bench, I'm kind of confident that those players are going to get returns. Someone like Torres, I think, is itching for a return in the sense that he's going to play central for City all year if they don't buy Cristiano Ronaldo. No, if they buy Cristiano Ronaldo, I'll be selling Torres like that. But Torres has played really well in the minutes that he's played. He's played, I think, 90 minutes in both games. And he's just been unlucky. I think he did score in one of the games. It was offside. So he looks bright. And for £7 million, I don't really think you can get much more value out of that for a team as good as Man City. So it's just a case of balance. I think everyone needs to just kind of hold their horses. If you've got the double week transfer, don't feel the need to burn it completely if you want to stick with Bruno and if you want to stick with Salah.
I mean, let's. I just want to. It's a good question here, saying any insights into players missing fixtures due to the forthcoming internationals, implications for transfers.
The problem with that is that even though the Premier League made this ruling about kind of red flagged countries, is that still might change because the British government have said that they could potentially help FIFA and UEFA sort this problem out because the Premier League made this rogue stance. I understand why the Premier League have made it, but again, I think people need to just keep their ear to the ground and just wait and see. It shouldn't affect this game too much because even if they do go, it's still not a game week. The Premier League shuts down because players have gone on abroad. It's an international week. It's only really afterwards. That's why I always say wait till the end of that period when players have been away and they've come back to their clubs, because that's when you hear about guys being on 16-hour flights and they're fit but they're not ready, and then they're suddenly sat on the bench and you're wondering why that was because no one told you.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. I do agree with that. So let's sort of touch more on Bruno Fernandez and look, he's a premium player now. A couple of alternatives at Manchester United. There's Paul Pogba, 5 assists in, out of United's 6 goals, I believe. Yeah, no, 6 goals. Yep, 6 goals, which is a ridiculous return. And I think the only worry for me right now is he going to drop back into the pivot? That's where I really hope he doesn't for Manchester United's, case as well. But you've also got Jadon Sancho. Now, I actually think Jadon Sancho will start on the weekend, and I think he's an interesting option. He's a bit of a punt, though. So where are you sitting on both those players? I think Paul Pogba, for me, is a really great differential to Bruno Fernandes or an alternative. I think Jadon Sancho is a little bit risky right now, but if Jadon Sancho gets up and running, he could be Manchester United's most creative force in that front line.
Totally, and I think those two players are really good differential alternatives if you want to pick Manchester United players in your team, if that's something you're looking at. Now, obviously, after the last performance for United, it's kind of a bit like hit or miss. However, with Paul Pogba, it's the first time a player, I think, has ever got 5 assists in 2 Premier League games, first time in history. So that in itself is an important statistic because it shows the position he's playing this year. As you said there, Scott McTominay has had surgery on his groin issue. United have been trying to manage that groin issue for quite a long time now. It goes back, I think, to last season, and they felt that it was being managed well. It's just that he kind of had a small tear again in the last game. So not really a surprise that he's gone. But as you said, does Paul Pogba then now drop back into the double pivot? My thought on that is no, because Marcus Rashford's not quite fit yet. So that's maybe the alternative. And you've just said there about Jadon Sancho. I think Jadon Sancho is worth a punt. I think if you've got money to spare and you want to do something a little bit different, and maybe you've had a bad first 2 weeks and you're looking for points, you're digging around and you don't really just want to rely on Bruno. You don't want to pay maybe that elite 11 to 12 million pound mark. You could get some really, really good value with Pogba and Sancho. And I think Sancho is going to be one of those players that once he settles, whether it be sooner or later, he will churn out points week after week after week, even when he doesn't play well. He might have a bad game and still get you an assist. He's that kind of player. That's his type of game. And I think that he will be one of the most owned players, maybe going up to Christmas. So when we go forward, keep your eye on Jadon Sancho, because if he starts like people think he will probably start, then he's going to be a really, really good option. But we saw last year, everyone waited for Donny van der Beek to come into their teams. I know lots of United fans picked him in their FPL teams. It didn't quite work, and it never, ever happened. But I don't think you need to worry about that with Jadon Sancho. I think he will play plenty of games.
Is Varane an option, Rob?
I think he's an option, but not yet. So you've got to think about the upside. So with Varane, you're talking clean sheets, but can you get better value out of Luke Shaw and Wan-Bissaka, who are also going to get the clean sheet, but are also going to get assists? So this is why fullbacks are the kings of defensive picks. When you look at it, you know, lots of people never pick a centre back in their back five. And that's the smart way to do it. Pick 5 fullbacks. And if you can, go and find yourself a Stuart Dallas like last year, who essentially is playing in midfield. We talked about Livramento as well, didn't we? And he is effectively playing in midfield at the moment. He's starting as a wing back, but he's way up the pitch. You know, he's not, you know, he's taking shots on the edge of the box. That's where he lives. So he's going to get you some extra value at £4 million. So look for those types of players to just supplement what you're doing. And then you just find that week after week, if you're hitting that 60-point total, you're getting those points from maybe those left field picks rather than your big premium picks.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a comment here saying, just joined to have Vardy captain versus Norwich. Yeah. Vardy's a bit of a strange one, isn't he? I think there is an element of decline, Rob, to Jamie Vardy. I think he is slowing down a bit, but he will score goals. He will have a purple patch. He always does. And I think it's a really good shout. Leicester have been a little bit off the boil.
I avoided Leicester in my picks because they had so many defensive injuries to start off with. Now I've still got Schmeichel as one of my goalkeepers, and I benched him for 2 weeks, and he actually got some really good points. I was like, typical. But I tried to avoid Leicester because there's too much uncertainty. You know, when you've got injuries at the back, that's going to affect your whole team. It's going to affect your assists from your midfield, and it's also going to affect someone like Jamie Vardy. Now, this is the week to go big on Vardy. If you want Jamie Vardy and you want him in, they're playing Norwich. You would expect that Leicester up their performance and find ways to score goals against a really bad defence. And that's the best way to hedge your bet week to week. Look forward to the teams that do ship the goals. There's always 3 or 4 teams in the Premier League every season that doesn't matter how well they play, they're going to concede. Sheffield United were the beautiful option last year because everyone thought their defenders were going to do well like they did the year before. And if you thought that they weren't going to do as well, then you were targeting that club for your attackers. And that's kind of, I tried to do that with Sheffield United, and Sheffield United got hammered every week. So you can hold your horses a little bit. Week 4, week 5, week 6, you start to see the teams that really get hammered. But we know Norwich are going to probably be one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we're going to move on to Harry Kane before we wrap up. And we've got a lovely graphic here, haven't we, Rob, on Harry Kane? And we're just looking at the points. So if you listen to this on audio, we have his FPL points per season. So you start off at 2012, 2013, he only had 5 points very early in his career. Next season, 28. But here's where he really starts to shine. And this is really the Pochettino days, isn't it, Rob? You know, 2014, 15, 191 points. I mean, some of these are staggering. The year later, 2015, 16, 211 points. 16, 17, 224. 17, 18, 217 points. And then you had a little bit of a dip, still did very well. 18, 19, 160. 19, 20, 158. And then last season was his greatest ever one. Astonishing, 242 points. Am I right in believing that Bruno Fernandez finished higher than Kane last season, or was it Kane?
I think Bruno was number 1 last season for the whole of
which is staggering. So you imagine how well Bruno did, but 242 points from. I think the biggest thing about Harry Kane, I'm going to hold off on Harry Kane because I just need to see how he's going to work. You know, it's a new manager, a new system. But I'm looking at Harry Kane. I'm looking at all the other strikers. Harry Kane, what he'll give you that other strikers don't is he'll give you assists. He's a playmaker. But the question is, will he do what he did last season? You know, he used to drop back, didn't he, under Jose, and he pick up the ball and give it to Son. Is he going to be allowed to do that with Nuno, or is he going to be made to play, you know, more off the shoulder, or more of a traditional number 9?
Well, I think when Jose went to Tottenham, one of the big observations was that obviously Harry Kane can play as a number 10 or maybe more of a false 9. and go back into those areas of creativity, picking the ball up in the channels, finding players, sliding them in, letting Son overlap. That's why we saw that huge total last year, 242. Just to kind of look at the previous 2 seasons where you got 160 and 158, injury seasons. So it's one of those things. If Kane is fit, he's going to be in your team. If he's not fit, you're going to sell him, aren't you? So it's not too much of a risk because that's dictated to by that. But when you look at what Nuno wants to do, and you look at Nuno's system maybe at Wolves, I think you will see that he will try and replicate some of those things that we saw at Wolves. And we always did see at Wolves that the most dangerous players on the pitch were maybe the wider ones and the striker. So we knew what Jimenez would do. Jimenez is a kind of a perennial favourite for people because even again, if Wolves were playing badly, Jimenez got chances. So
yeah, he scored, yeah.
He's a goal scorer. So that's kind of, we talked about goal scorers at the top of the show with the 3 that I'd picked. And that's the way to look at it. I think with Harry Kane, he will play more as a number 9 this year. I think the shape will dictate that. And I think you'll see that Spurs will utilise the wider areas more than, say, Jose did. Jose playing a bit more of a kind of deeper style and a more workman-like style. And Kane did facilitate all those things. And part of that 2-4-2 that he got last season is that he was also getting man of the match awards. So your striker doesn't always get man of the match, doesn't always get the credibility he deserves. It sometimes goes to kind of more of your midfield merchants. But Harry Kane seems to do a bit of everything. Now, we know that he's staying at Spurs. We know that he's probably going to sign a new contract, which, I'd said maybe 6 or 8 weeks ago that was what really the destination of Harry Kane was, that if Manchester City didn't want to pay 175 for him, which they never did, Spurs were not going to sell, and that meant he would get a new contract. So I think now that is the talk, and that is where Spurs are. And Spurs have started well. I think the first 2 weeks of the season, they look defensively solid. Kane will come into that team. He will score points. He will get goals. He will get assists. There's no doubt about it. It's just whether players have got that £12 million plus to go premium on him, because that's the choice. You're going to have to get rid of Salah or Bruno or ignore Lukaku. So for me, I tweeted out earlier on, is this the week to go with Harry Kane? And is this the week to go with Kane and Son, completely revamp it? And the answer from me is no. Just like it was about Lukaku last week. This is the week to look at Lukaku. So even though Chelsea are playing Liverpool, I don't think Virgil van Dijk with his, let's just say, recently repaired knee is ready for Lukaku. I think Lukaku's going to run him, and I think it's going to be hard. That's going to be that's going to be a tough game for them. And it's, if Van Dijk looks after Lukaku, then so be it. But again, it's the sort of game that Liverpool might win that game 3-2, but Lukaku gets 2 goals. So I feel good about Lukaku. Whereas I look at Harry Kane, he was on the bench last week. He still might be on the bench this week just because of fitness concerns, but he's going to start sooner rather than later. So I would not be surprised if FPL players here watching the show are looking towards him now and thinking that he's going to be one of their premium players, because he does get goals, assists, man of the match awards, and he's going to be Tottenham's main man again. If Tottenham do anything in the top 6 this year, Harry Kane will get all of those points. And then you've got to think about, do I put Son with him? And I think they're such a great duo. They're probably the best duo outside of, say, Salah and Mane over the past 3 or 4 seasons. Salah and Mane being incredible premium options. Son's now, I think, up to 10 million, I think, on his value. It's a way of buying 2 players from one club that do all of the good stuff. And if you get the good stuff, that means you're going to get points.
Yeah, it's a really tough one. I think a lot of players will wait and see how Kane actually does react. I mean, you hear from Gary Neville, he's a saint, all of this sort of stuff. He'll be disappointed. He wanted to leave. There's no doubt about it. The question is, how is he gonna adjust? How is he gonna put his head down? How's he gonna be? What's his attitude gonna be like? I'm sure he'll be fine, but I think it's just a bit of an adjustment. I wouldn't be taking a punt on him yet. But you're looking at his goals and assists here as well. I mean, you're looking at it. Obviously, those peak seasons under Pochettino where he was absolutely flying, 29 goals consecutively. And then obviously he's had a little bit of a dip, the injury seasons. He had 23, but most assists he's ever had in the season, the Premier League season. 14 is astonishing for a number 9. Astonishing.
Yeah.
And you're looking at that and you're thinking, That's differential, isn't it? That's why he is valued at 12.5 million or whatever it is, because of the fact that he's not just going to get you goals, he's going to get you assists. He's also going to be on penalties, Rob. But I don't see Spurs scoring a lot of goals. I think they'll be quite strong defensively. We saw with Wolves, they were difficult to break down under Nuno, but they didn't score a lot of goals, did they? It was a lot of 1-0s, 2-1s, 2-0 victories. So that's, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, if Spurs do score, it might be Son and Kane. But how many goals are they realistically going to get? I think an interesting player, I mean, he took the penalty this week, Dele Alli. He's playing a bit more of a box-to-box role. But like, could he be a differential, do you think? Or no, he's playing a little bit too deep for him to be in contention as an FPL pick?
No, I think he is. And I don't think it's too much of a bother about which part of the pitch he's playing in, because again, he's one of those players that from set pieces, he might get you the odd goal. He's going to get involved. He's a player that strides forward with the ball as well. So he will get assists in those manner. And it doesn't really matter if he's playing a little bit deeper, because that's the Nuno way. It was harder for Dele Alli to play Mourinho's style of football, because let's be honest, it just wasn't a very nice style of football to play. You know, it hurt him. It hurt his kind of talent. But I think with Son and with Kane, neither of them are risks if they're starting. So what we're saying at the moment is that Harry Kane might not start. He probably will. He's almost ready. And I wouldn't be surprised that, again, the minute he starts, he'll be banging in goals. But FPL players have to decide whether they're willing to burn other avenues to accommodate Harry Kane, because that's the big question. And for me at the moment, with Harry Kane being almost £1 million more than Romelu Lukaku, do I think that he'll get £1 million more worth of goals and assists for me? No, I think Lukaku's got it all built around him. I think he's going to get players are going to feed him. And you saw what he did against Arsenal. And I think against Liverpool, he'll be very motivated to show that he's the player that went and won Inter Milan the title in Italy. So for me, Lukaku is the striker at the moment. I actually, just as a footnote to that, I had Tony in my team for Brentford, and Brentford had got a nice run of fixtures going, and it was a bit of a decision for me because obviously he's 6.5 million, and I think he'll score goals. I think he will get goals for Brentford in the coming weeks, but he was the sacrifice because you cannot get rid of Antonio at the moment. He's way too good. And I know a few of the commenters there were talking about Danny Ings and choosing other players. I mean, Danny Ings at Aston Villa, he's going to be the point of the attack like he was at Southampton. And even when they play poorly, he's probably going to get a goal. They had a penalty last week and they gave it to El Ghazi, and I was mortified. I was like, why are you giving that to El Ghazi? Now, he is their main penalty taker, but I want Danny Ings to take penalties for obvious reasons. But he's still going to score plenty of goals, and he'll get the odd assist as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. And look, let's sort of wrap up here. And look, we've had a look at the game week. What's your should I say, big tip for this week? What would you be saying people should be doing?
It's if you've saved those two transfers, as we kind of alluded to earlier on, this is an important week to decide about premiums. So we've talked in depth today about the real premium options for FPL players. And like I said in game week 1, don't go with your favourites. Look at the fixture list. Work your way through it over 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks and sniff out the opportunities. So I think with Bruno, I think United have got a nice run for the first 7 games. So people want to stick with Bruno, no problem with that. You know, Bruno Fernandez is an elite player, scores lots of points, gets goals, assists, takes penalties. So if you want to stick with that, stick with it. But you're going to get weeks like last week happen now and then, where if United don't perform, then Bruno Fernandez is not going to score points. And there's going to be a lot of points hemorrhaging in other parts of FPL that you haven't bought into simply because you prefer a pick. Look at it a little bit more scientifically. Go for it and feel for it that way. And I just think Lukaku, for me, I think Lukaku is going to be the player of the year for FPL. I just got that feeling. I think Chelsea will have a title run. He's going to be in the mix. And it's about staying fit, isn't he? If he stays fit, the whole team, the whole attack is built around Romelu Lukaku. You know, get him the ball in the box and he's going to score goals. You see it. His goal record is absolutely horrendous. And as Manchester United fans, yes, you know, he might not have done it in the 2 years that he was at Old Trafford into a deeper extent. But even then, he was showing returns in a kind of poor, failing United side. And now he's in a Chelsea team that looks like it's pretty exciting that they're going to be on some kind of title run. He's going to be the fulcrum of that attack.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that. And I think there was a comment saying, I don't have any Liverpool and Man City players. I can't remember who it was by. And that's one of my things I'm saying. Look, it doesn't matter that you have having that mentality going into this game. It doesn't work. It doesn't mean you support Liverpool. Doesn't mean you want Liverpool to win or score. It's a game. It's a bit of fun. I think that mentality I just never understand, to be honest, mate.
It's a game. And it's a bit of fun, and it's about whether football fans know their football. That's what it's about. It's not a game of favoritism. You could put your favorite 3 players from your favorite club in there all the time, and I know lots of people do that, and you can get away with that. No issue with that. But look a little bit deeper, and you can kind of find a way.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, look, you can see the code across the bottom. It's 2RG, 2DX. I mean, it's a massive, massive league. I don't even know how many people they're in. It's over 1,000 people. I'm probably in the bottom 5% right now. I'm having an absolute shocker, but I'll be moving my way up the league. No problems at all. Rob, thanks for joining me, guys. Make sure you do check out the Masterclass. That'll be live on Sunday. So for the away games, because Rob won't go to those, he goes to the home games. We'll actually be doing them live straight after kickoff. So make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you next time.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.